5-10 years from now, we have, a many 100-person large alumni group that is helping each other find jobs, co-founding companies, mentoring new Olim, and kind of paying forward this experience. So I think there is a long-term understanding. In the short term, we had one fellow from last year who is looking for a new job. She wrote to the WhatsApp group of the cohort, and within 10 minutes, she had 5 job opportunities. And within 1 week, she had 3 job offers.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumi Tech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with C-Tech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Let's meet Abbey On, Executive Director of Nevo Network. Abbey builds networks and believes that cohort-based experiences can be transformative. She has spent the better part of the last 20 years creating programs that impacted hundreds of students and fellows' personal and professional journeys, whether it be putting a roof on a home in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina or directing leadership fellowships at Duke and Harvard. Since moving to Israel in 2015, Abbey has built 2 nonprofits that impact the Israeli tech ecosystem. Currently, she's the executive director of Nevo Network, a professional development fellowship that helps Olim, new immigrants, amplify their tech careers in Israel, and is backed by Michael Eisenberg of Aleph VC. Abbey On, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you for joining me here. How are you?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm looking forward to talking to you about cohort-based experiences, community experiences, your work today with Olim, new immigrants to Israel, integrating as part of the tech ecosystem. So doing a lot of positive impact in our community, but also some insights that I think are relevant for everyone really to understand. And I'm looking forward to gaining insights myself in these next 20 minutes. So, Abbey, tell me, where you're from. You're from the United States, but how you grew up and how do you get involved with this idea of cohort-based experiences?
Sure. I grew up in Virginia. And when I was growing up there, it wasn't a very large Jewish community, but I was both an athlete and also part of USY, which is United Synagogue Youth, which is a Jewish youth movement. And I learned really early on that there's power in community, whether it's as part of a team or as part of this youth movement, and kind of getting to know people from all over the area and doing things together and kind of building connections that way. And that's something that I took with me. It was always interesting, the notion of building community and leadership development. And it's something that I've been really fortunate that I get to do in my career.
Wonderful. And so where did this really start, this idea of cohort-based experiences?
So the first role that I got out of my second degree, I did a master's at Brandeis University in Boston, and it was really, really cold. So I moved to California, and I was really fortunate to get a fellowship doing work on campuses on the West Coast, helping students have a conversation around Israel, which at that time and still today can be really challenging. And I saw that there was really something powerful in helping people have conversations around something hard. And that kind of ignited my love for working with students and people who are going through some sort of transformative journey. And from there, I was really, really fortunate to take over this role at Hillel International to build this experiential learning program that allowed 3,000 students to respond to the hurricane that hit the Gulf Coast of the United States. So I got to spend 3 years between Washington, D.C. and Mississippi and Louisiana doing this kind of social justice experiential work and helping students understand what their responsibility was in the world and why they were choosing to do this kind of work. And at the same time, trying to figure out how to interact with the local community and figure out what their needs were and how to build a program that was relevant to them as well.
Incredible. Tell me more about these efforts after the hurricane and what you were doing with Hillel International.
So Hillel was really lucky to get a lot of the money that was donated to the Jewish community. And so they could build something from scratch that kind of put together a lot of their values, which was experiential, social justice, community. And we brought students from all over North America. And we had the chance actually to train staff also all over the country to think about how do we interact with students and how do we create an experience that's going to impact them for the rest of their lives. And I see it today that people are doing this kind of work, whether it's communal work or teaching or justice work, because of the week they spent in the Gulf Coast. We not only gutted homes and put roofs on homes and did rebuilding work, but we had really in-depth conversations about our own responsibility and the Jewish role of social justice and where that lives in our modern lives. And I think it hit home for a lot of people. And for me, it was by far the best professional experience I've had to date, because it kind of set me up for understanding that building community can be done anywhere, anytime, and be really powerful.
So
I will say also,
the students experience
I got to train my husband. No, I'll say also, one of the staff members that I trained in that experience turned out to be the man I married. So it had a doubly rewarding experience for me.
Beautiful. Now, if you look at it from the lenses of the students who are undergoing this experience, what did it do to them? How did you perceive from their eyes, their journey, working as a group?
I think that they went on this experience feeling like there was something kind of sexy about it. There was this big disaster that had happened, and they felt that it was really attractive to them to respond. And then once they got there, we were literally sleeping in tents. We were, in cold weather. We were in uncomfortable conditions, and then doing really hard physical labor all day. And that kind of drove home to them that no matter what drove them there, they really had to ask themselves what they were doing there once they arrived. And a lot of the questions were, why were you helping people in New Orleans and in Mississippi and not in your own backyard? What does it mean to respond to this kind of thing on a daily basis? Where's the kind of ongoing social justice response in your life, not only in this 1 week that you can take out, but in an ongoing basis? And it's something that I see that they were able to bring back to campus with them and then take into their everyday life. And so there was something really kind of transformational that happened for them.
Right. And so today you're taking those same experiences and your understanding of building strong communities through the Israeli tech ecosystem, right?
Yes, a little bit of a different milieu, but similar kind of foundational thinking around it. I was really fortunate to be connected 2 years ago to Michael Eisenberg, who is one of the founding partners of a big venture capital here in Tel Aviv. And he's known both for that work, but also for being really, really passionate about new immigrants and helping them both come to Israel and be really successful here. And Michael and I met and we talked about different ways to encourage people to come to Israel, which is a really big conversation right now in general. And we finally came around kind of after iterating a number of times to not necessarily encouraging people to come off the bat, but thinking really critically about what it would mean to create community for the people that had already decided to move here and build their career here. So about 2 years ago, we founded an organization called Nevo Network, which is working directly with these new Olim and helping their professional development journey be successful in Israel. And one of the really critical things for that is network. That, if you didn't grow up in Israel, if you don't necessarily speak Hebrew, do university, do an army program here, then you don't have that network that native Israelis have. And network is almost everything here. And so we built Nevo as a way to kind of act as that network that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And in the 2 years that we're running, we've seen it be super successful.
Right. So how do you, how do you judge the quality of a network? So how do you go and how do you know whether, the network that you're building is successful? Are there, key metrics that you're looking at or KPIs that you're looking at?
I think recruiting and selection in terms of the people that you're inviting into the cohort are really critical. One, we're looking for diversity. In the second cohort, we have people from 12 countries. Every one of their immigration journeys was going to be really different. Someone coming from Russia compared to Brazil, compared to the US or Australia. And we have people who are working all across tech. So we have engineers and product founders, people working in venture capital. And so they're kind of seeing all the different facets of the ecosystem. And therefore they can create a really dynamic conversation. And also they're each bringing their own kind of micro network. And so we're looking for people that can kind of help build up the cohorts network while building their own.
Right. And so internally within the network, how does it actually run? So you have people, tangibly. So you bring people in a cohort, then they go work in the ecosystem. But how does the community actually form, and what is the ongoing activity of this network?
So the people that we're inviting into the cohort are already working. They're already employed by amazing companies.
Right.
They have great roles. This is really meant to kind of help them leverage where they're at and get to the next stage, whether that be to become a team leader or an executive, to perhaps co-found a company. And so they're often looking to leverage where they're at. But what do? We meet every 2 weeks. So one of the ways that we build community is actually being together, right? It seems really intuitive and simple, but just being together and getting to interact, especially after the last 2 years of spending a lot of time on Zoom and in our homes, can be really, really powerful. We connect each fellow to a mentor, to an Israeli mentor who is more senior than they are in the ecosystem, who can act as a kind of deep relationship for them and someone that can advise them through kind of pivot points or career questions. And at the same time, we try to build a broad and deep network, and we're connecting them to as many Israelis as possible. So to anyone listening, if you want to be connected to any of our fellows, we're more than happy. We're literally trying on a daily basis. Anyone I meet, I'm like, oh, I have a person I want to set you up for coffee with. We're really trying to figure out all of the people that we can connect them to so they walk out of the fellowship knowing a lot more Israelis than they did coming in. They get career coaching. We have retreats. And they also work together to create different projects with one another so that they get to know each other deeply. And we hope one day either decide to choose each other as co-founders or help each other find next jobs or help each other just kind of make hard decisions.
Right. And so from your perspective as sort of the organizer of this, how do you know if a cohort was successful or not? So I think, one of the things that I've always been struggling with understanding is how do I measure the efficiency or the successfulness of a community that I'm running, right? How do I know if it's actually providing value to people, if people are actually want to be a part of it truthfully? So how do you gauge that managerial question?
It's a really good question, and one that I think has two answers. I think there's a short term and a long term. I'll start with the long term. The long term is 5-10 years from now, we have, a many 100-person large alumni group that is helping each other find jobs, co-founding companies, mentoring new Olim, and kind of paying forward this experience. So I think there is a long-term understanding. In the short term, we had one fellow from last year who is looking for a new job. She wrote to the WhatsApp group of the cohort, and within 10 minutes, she had 5 job opportunities. And within 1 week, she had 3 job offers. She's been in Israel for a year and a half and would never have had the ability to do something like that otherwise. One of the other fellows just left his current job to found his own company. When he did so, he turned to Michael and said, listen, I think I'm ready to make the jump. And I just want to know that if I do, can you perhaps make a connection for me? Can you introduce me to this kind of person? And because of the network of people, he felt confident enough after only a few years in Israel, he's originally Argentinian, to make a jump and found his own company here. So, those are the kind of anecdotal things that tell us that we're going in the right direction.
Right. And then in the long term?
In the long term, we hope that, this is something that will not only serve the kind of purposes that we just talked about, which is kind of helping people find jobs and found companies and act as that community of people that can be references, but that encourages other people from around the world to say, Israel's a place that I want to work. There is an opening and welcoming community, not only of Israelis, but also of Olim, that are going to help make sure that we have a way to be successful professionally. This is a big question when people are coming from outside of Israel. I had it as an Olam myself. How am I going to translate my career from the United States to Israel? How am I going to be successful? Am I going to make enough money? Am I going to find meaning? And these people, if we leverage this network and in this community correctly, will answer that question before those people even make the decision.
Beautiful. Now, from your perspective, if for anybody that's looking to create a community or start a community, what are some non-trivial things that you've learned, through your time about building successful communities that we can be keeping in mind?
I think from the beginning to get to know each member of the community and to really try to figure out and work with them to figure out what's driving them. When we kick off Nevo, we get each of the fellows to do an exercise on finding their why. And it's a little bit of an exercise for us, the people running the community, my partner Roni and I, as well as for each of the fellows. So we kind of understand their passion and what's pushing them. And that helps us figure out who we connecting them to inside the fellowship, outside the fellowship, and to come with a really clear foundational structure of what you want to achieve. And for us, from a leadership development perspective, we look at leadership of self and leadership of teams, right? And then for Nevo specifically, we look at connection to Israel. So everything we're doing, we're thinking really critically at, are we pushing them to understand their self-motivation better? Are we thinking about how they interact with the cohort and teams? And are we pushing their connection to Israel and the ecosystem so that they walk away with a deeper understanding and connection to the people and organizations in Israel? So I think for each community, there are really specific pieces that need to be considered.
Then that's what it sounds like. And are there, best practices or standards for, how often they should be interacting with the community, or how often the community should be reaching out to them? Because at the end, people are leading, complicated lives, and then there are communities that they want to be involved in, and you want them to be as involved, but not in a way that's distracting them from everything else that's going on in their life, but ameliorating it, right, and augmenting it. So, are there best practices to these sorts of communications?
So we find that because we're an in-person community, that we're not meeting 3 times a year per se, we're meeting kind of every other week, that we try to make sure the communication is, when we're doing it, it's clear, it's not too often, and if it needs to be, you find kind of a captain within the community to kind of go out and do the peer influence. Rather than us being the reminder of communication often, we find people within the community that can push, but that more so everything we do, we make it excellent. If it's excellent, this will become a priority and a place that they want to be. If we come in under excellent, there's a percentage chance that this becomes less of a priority. So everything we do, Roni and I push ourselves to make sure that we're bringing the best people to speak, the best facilitators, the best experience. And that's not the kind of, the tech experience where everything is really upscale, but the content is the highest and best content that we can give them as it relates to the goals that we have.
100%. So Abbey, what do you get out of this? So why are you in this, in this field, in this work, in community building, in Olim? Where are you at?
That's a great question. I really, from my time in the Gulf Coast to the work that I did with Hillel, I worked later at Duke and at Harvard, again with students. And I love this moment where a person or a group of people is in transition and you can help them think through kind of left or right, up or down. I love being involved in that moment where someone is about to grow and you can help them figure out what that growth can look like. I think in some ways I feel like a catalyst in helping inspire someone to do something rather than be the act itself. And for me, the notion that I get to interact with people all the time is really exciting. That for me is kind of what motivates me, this notion of building community and of getting to really build deep relationships with different people. Right.
I love it. And at the end, I'm always curious, the community builders. I mean, it's such a personality, and I always see people getting so much satisfaction from building a strong community as they go through. Did you know from your time, with Hillel International, or even before that you're going to be dedicating a very big part of your career to community building and working maybe specifically with Olim?
I don't think that I could have, that if you asked me when I was younger, I would have known it. But if I look back, I was always the one organizing things. I was always the one taking on extra. I love the kind of planning and the connecting of people. And I don't think that I would have ever foretold that I'd work with Olim, because I didn't know necessarily that I would live in Israel. But it became really clear to me when I got here that there was this amazing community, that there were great things that you could do with it. The first 4 years I spent as a CEO of another organization that was bringing MBAs from outside of Israel to do paid internships inside Israel. And that was super exciting because it was 90% non-Jews and 50% non-Americans. And it was people that would have never otherwise come to Israel. And so you got to build this crazy community for 3 months over the summer of people who are kind of experiencing Israel often for the first time. So that was a whole other lens. And that kind of led me to what I'm doing now, which is there's this amazing opportunity that Israel provides in terms of the tech ecosystem to build community.
100%. Now, if you had to look at the work that you're doing and extrapolate 5-10 years in the future, where is it at?
It's a really good question. I hope in some ways that Nevo still exists. I don't know that I'll be involved in the same role, but I would love to see that this Olim community exists. And I see myself, I feel myself growing my own community in Israel. Nevo started in some ways because I felt like I didn't have my own network. And so I thought, well, if I don't have a network, then let me help other people build a network. It's something that my partner and I kind of figured out together. And so if I can continue doing that for people, if I continue doing this work of interacting deeply with people, then I think I'll be really happy.
Beautiful. What inspires you in your day to day? So, in building the community and working with Olim, where do you gather your own inspiration from?
So I'm the kind of person that reads like 4 books at a time. So I would say writing, reading, fiction, stories. I really believe that storytelling is a powerful tool, both for the individual. It's something that I've used throughout my life, whether it's traveling or as an Ola, to kind of connect to other people. And I think it's also a super powerful tool for communities. It's a way that people connect to each other. And so I really love reading fiction, nonfiction, as many stories as I can get to kind of inspire me.
I love it. I love it. And if you had to choose a few words that would describe you, perhaps words that any of your community members would choose to describe Abbey, what words come to mind?
So I think I would, first, I feel like global citizen. I lived abroad for the first time when I was 8. And spent a lot of time traveling throughout my life, and moved to Israel 6 years ago. So I feel myself kind of somewhere between many countries, and something that kind of my most favorite thing to do is travel. I think community builder, catalyst, someone that tries to push other people to kind of get through the best part of their journey, and a storyteller. I'm also a writer, and I'm someone who really believes in the power of story. And that's something that I see kind of continues.
Amazing. Abbey, thank you so much. And not just for these 20 minutes, but for the work that you're doing in the tech ecosystem in Israel, and for the work that you were doing with Hello International. It sounds like, you're not just building a community, but you're building communities that make a really positive impact, especially on people that are in a point of struggle that they really need it. And so it sounds like just a huge positive impact all around. And thank you very much for joining me for these 20-minute leaders.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.